The Lily-White Boy by Adam Macqueen, from the book Haunted Tales, published by Swift Press, 2024. He hadn't been able to use the rear view all the way up because of Jack's stuff piled in the back, and it wasn't until they were nearly halfway home that he realised how nervous he'd been, having to rely on just his side mirrors. When they got in, she went straight to the kitchen to put the kettle on. When she brought him his tea, he was sitting there with his coat still on. "He'll be having his dinner now, I expect," she said as she worked her way round the lounge, switching on lamps and drawing down the blinds. "It looked all right, that canteen, I thought. I don't expect he'll ring till tomorrow. He'll be settling in. I thought we could just have something out of the freezer." "Whatever's easiest," he told her, and he reached for the remote control. Jack didn't call until the Thursday, when they were just settling down to their tea. He kept an eye on the pans while Susan talked to him, and the sauce was just beginning to stick on the bottom when she called him through to have a word. "Don't waste your money. Your mother'll tell me your news," he said as soon as he picked up the receiver from the hall table. "How are you getting on? Okay?" His son sounded echoey and far away. "It's great, Dad. Really cool. I've met some really nice people and my room's fine. And I'm going to the tryouts for the football team tomorrow." "And how about the work?" "Well, lectures don't start till next week, but I've met my tutor and she seems really nice." "That's good. They'll keep you busy, I expect. Well, I mustn't keep you. Are you out tonight?" "I thought I might go down the bar." "All right, well, enjoy yourself. Remember, your money's got to last you the whole term." "Yes, Dad." When he put the phone down, she was watching him from the kitchen. "You didn't have to be so quick," she said. "We got him that card, remember?" Well, he took the plate she was holding out for him. "He's got more important things to do than spend ages gabbing to us. He's off out anyway." "Is he? I hope he's being sensible. Hurry up now, that thing's on you wanted to watch." He had done all the brain teasers by the time she went for a shower on Monday morning, and when she came out he was making a start on the crossword. He didn't even like crosswords. "What are you going to do today?" she asked him while she looked round for her keys. "Oh, I don't know." He folded the paper in half and looked at her over the top of his glasses. "There's that fence at the back, and I suppose I ought to check the guttering before the winter." She checked in her bag for a packet of tissues. "Why don't you make a start on that stuff from your mum's in the loft? You could move some of the boxes down into Jack's room while you sort through them and decide what you want to keep." She saw him bristle and wished she could bite back her words. "That's his room for as long as he needs it. I'm not filling it up with our stuff. What if he wants to come home for a weekend?" "All right then." She smiled meekly and went in for a kiss. He gave her his cheek and shook out the paper with a grunt, trying to think of a 6-4 phrase that meant shapely manoeuvres, a hit with military. He didn't get up to the loft until the following week, when the weather made getting anything done in the garden impossible. He felt even closer to the rain up here, with it drumming on the tiles just a few inches above his head, but thankfully it didn't seem to be coming through anywhere. There was no sign of mice either, which was a relief. The boxes from his mother's were not far back. They had only cleared out her house in February, but Jack had dumped a load of his stuff in front of them, lazily blocking the duck boards, which were the only safe path down the middle of the loft, instead of balancing it across the joists under the eaves like everything else. There was his old Dungeons and Dragons stuff. He had been mad about that for a couple of years. Some bin liners full of clothes he wouldn't wear anymore, CDs he didn't want his friends at university to know about, and a box of books too. He spent a while leafing through the Jungle Book in the light of the single 60-watt bulb. smoothing out the dog-eared pages, and remembering how they had read it together when Jack was little enough to tuck into the crook of his arm and carry up the wooden stairs to Bedfordshire once his head had started to droop into his chest. When he had shifted Jack's stuff to where it ought to have been in the first place, there was a gap just wide enough to drag his mother's boxes through to the trapdoor. One of them seemed to have split, and it left a trail of reddish dust, or maybe rust, on the boards behind it. He would have to bring up a dustpan and brush later. But when he got it to the edge of the trapdoor, and had to hold it awkwardly over his head in order to hoist it down, thankfully there didn't appear to be anything leaking from the bottom. He dumped it on top of a spread-out newspaper once he got it down to the lounge, just in case. It took him 3 more trips to get everything down, and when he was gathering the last bits and pieces together, he thought he heard a noise from downstairs. He called out, "Hello?" thinking that maybe Susan had popped back for her lunch, and even stuck his head through the trapdoor to peer down at the landing. But there was nobody there. He was hearing things now. He was finding it hard to get used to how quiet the house seemed without Jack in it. It was only after he had closed the trapdoor and put the ladder away that he realised he had forgotten about the dustpan and brush. Oh well, it would wait. When she got home from work, he was poring over the old family Bible, with the photographs in the front going all the way back to Victorian times. "Look," he told her, "I haven't seen these in years." She must have had them when her mother died. She was dying for a cup of tea, but it was so nice to see him enjoying something that she popped her reading glasses on and sat down next to him. "Who have we got there?" she asked, pointing to a girl in a white dress sitting on a high stool. "Is that your grandmother?" "No," he chuckled. "That's a little boy. My great-uncle William. I never knew him. He was killed in the war." "Oh, yes, I'd forgotten they used to put the boys in pinafores, too. Oh, look at his little face. He doesn't look too pleased to be having his picture taken, does he?" He smiled. "None of them do. Look at them. Miserable as sin. I think it's because they had to sit still for so long. Look, here's Nana." "Oh, wasn't she pretty?" The girl bore no relation to the sour-faced old woman she remembered from their engagement party, though she had spoken barely a word to her. She had nearly spoiled the wedding, too, dropping dead just a month before, with the church all booked and the dresses all ordered, and they had worried they might have to cancel, though Colin himself had not seemed that upset, saying they had never been close. She hadn't thought about her in years. How old is she there? He peered at the inscription beneath the photograph. 1916. So she would have been... He consulted the family tree at the front of the book. 18. I wonder what the occasion was. They peered at the long white dress with its corsage of lilies. Could it have been her engagement? Her own was still at the front of her mind. No, she didn't marry Grandpa till years after. It's in here, 1926. And besides, he'd be in it too, wouldn't he? She pursed her lips. Not necessarily. He might have been away in the war, and she might have had this photo taken for him, so he could carry it in the pocket of his uniform, to remember her by. He smiled at her. You've been at the Catherine Cooksons again. Do you want a cup of tea? Go on then. She took the book from him as he stood up and slid it onto her own lap. Could it have been, though? I don't think so. I think she met Grandpa through the church, and Mum said they married and had her quite quickly because by then Nana was already getting on for 30, and that was late to be having kids in those days. She gave one last disappointed glance at the picture before turning the page, and, as she did so, a piece of stiff card dropped out and slid to the carpet. "What's this?" she asked him when he came back in with the tray. She had put the photograph on the arm of the sofa. There didn't seem to be an obvious place in the book for it to have fallen out of. "Oh, I don't know. It was tucked into the same page as the picture of Nana. I suppose they didn't bother to mount it because of the face." The picture was of a young man in army uniform, standing in front of the usual painted backdrop. But although his tunic and puttees and even the badge on his caps could be seen clearly, where his face should have been, there was just a blank, white space. "I wonder if somebody scratched it out," she commented, swapping the picture for the packet of chocolate hobnobs he was holding out to her. "I don't know." He ran his thumb across the surface of the photograph. "It doesn't feel like it. It looks more like light shining off him. And did they have flash in those days? I suppose they must have had, mustn't they? Or perhaps something went wrong with the processing. Either way, they can't have been pleased. Look, it's in a studio. They must have paid good money for it." He turned the card over. The name of the company inscribed on the back meant nothing to him. But there was something else there, in spidery pencil, that he had to hold up to the light of the window to decipher. It says, Tommy, I think it is. Look, here, very faintly. I don't remember a Tommy. Have a look in the family tree. She wiped the last traces of biscuit from her fingers with a tissue before leafing back through the pages of the Bible. No, William's here, the brother, killed at Flares, 1916, but no Tommy. What was your granddad's name? Bert, he said. So that settled that. She was looking down at the family tree, tracing the branches with her finger. She found her own name etched at the bottom in biro. M. Susan Spencer, 1976. You should update this, she told him. Put Jack on, and Sarah's lot. You could even take it back further. They have all sorts on the internet these days. You can go back centuries. Carol at work was telling me she's doing theirs. He was still staring at the photo in the last of the day's light coming in through the window on the western front of the house. Maybe. He slipped it absently into the breast pocket of his shirt and rubbed his hands together. I think I might put the heating on tonight. It's cold in here, isn't it? You wouldn't believe it if you could see me, he told Jack. They've got all these records available, and I found your great-grandmother on there, and her brother and mother and father. No Tommy, however. Not that that was worth mentioning to Jack. He was a stonemason, it turns out, your great-great-grandfather. You have to pay extra to get a printout. I'm going to order some next time I'm online. His son chuckled at the end of the line. I never thought I'd hear you say online. The way he used to shout at me to get off the internet and stop wasting money when he wanted to use the phone. Aye, well, this is useful stuff I'm doing. I'm not just surfing. He smiled. For stuff further back than that, you have to go to the public record office, so we're thinking of getting the train down to London one week when your mum's got a couple of days off, and staying with Sarah and her lot. Wow, you're taking it really seriously. It's interesting. Well, I find it interesting. He felt suddenly bashful, embarrassed by his enthusiasm. What have you been up to, anyway? I went on a march on Saturday, Jack told him, against them bombing Iraq. The student union organised a coach and we all went down to London. Did you? He was surprised and a little uneasy. His son had never struck him as particularly political. And I've signed the petition. It's online. I'll have to email you the link now you know how to use it. Did you know they're thinking of bringing back the draft in America? Are they? I've not read about it in the paper. Jack sounded exasperated. No, well, it's hardly been reported. But it's in front of the Senate, or Congress, or whatever. And if it happens there, it's only a matter of time before it happens over here. No, I don't think you need to worry about that. He suddenly felt sick in the pit of his stomach. I can remember the fuss when they got rid of National Service. I'm sure they wouldn't want to bring it back again. You didn't have to do it, did you? His son sounded curious. No, they got rid of it long before I was old enough. Your granddad did, though. He was in the Royal Engineers just after the war. I remember him taking us to Aldershot to show us his old barracks. And my Uncle Graham was out in Malaya. And it turns out my great-uncle, that would be your great-great-uncle... Enough family tree, Jack protested, laughing. All right, he smiled. You look after yourself anyway. Do you want to speak to your mother again before you go? Susan stubbed her toe on one of the boxes when she was on her way to bed, and because she was only wearing her bunny slippers, it really hurt. Right, I want these shifted, she told him, leaning on the computer table and trying to pinch some of the pain out of her foot. You've had them down here nearly 3 weeks. Jack's not coming home till the holidays. He said he's too busy, so you can put them in his room in the meantime. No arguing, all right? I've not even looked in that one yet, he said guiltily. I'll move them first thing in the morning. They went up to bed. There were the usual nighttime sounds of running water, and Colin setting the alarm, and the floorboards in the bedroom creaking. One by one their lamps went out. Soon the only sounds in the place were the clicks and gurgles of the central heating as the system switched over to economy 7, and the only light came from the clock on the video in the lounge, and the thin strip of moonlight that slipped between the curtains and stretched across the hearthrug and halfway up the scuffed magnolia on the far wall. As the night wore on, it worked its way slowly across the room, striping each of the cushions on the sofa in turn, and inching across the side table with its neatly stacked pile of ceramic coasters, until it illuminated the cardboard boxes stacked in the corner beside the desk where the computer stood. The machine started up without a sound. Its screen glowed white for a moment, a cold, bright rectangle in the darkness. But just as soon as the light had built up to its full intensity, it faded away again, leaving a blank frame in the corner of the room. The digital figures on the video silently rearranged themselves. 0500. Sergeant says we go over the top at dawn. 0500 hours, the army insists on calling it. But a damn silly time to be up in anyone's language, and an even damn sillier thing to be doing in it. One of our lads came up to the line from Pozières yesterday. Poor sod. I think he thought he was out of it for the foreseeable, but they just patched him up and packed him straight back down here with his arm in a sling, saying they'd give him a Webley instead of his rifle because you only need one hand to fire them, and they knew he would want to do his duty alongside his comrades. Anyhow, he was talking to some of the lads in the clearing station who'd been up at the front there, and they said Jerry looks to be in pretty bad shape. We've had our Jack Johnsons pounding him for 3 or 4 nights, making a hellish noise that you wouldn't believe. So maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will be the push that takes us there. That's what the lieutenant keeps telling us anyway. Myself, I won't believe it until I'm sipping a beer and writing you a postcard from sunny Berlin. But what do I know? I thought you were supposed to be moving that stuff, not reading it, said Susan, brushing her hair as she came into the lounge. Going to. It's just there's a lot of stuff here in the box I haven't been through yet. I think it might be the answer to our little mystery. Oh, the unknown soldier. She walked over and stood beside him, looking down at the yellowing paper in his hand. Yeah, it's a letter. There are a load of them in there, all tied up with ribbons. You'd love it. I think all the stuff in there came straight from Nana's. I'm not sure Mum even opened the box. And who are they from? He turned the letter over in his hand. Private T.A. Boscombe, 13th Service Battalion of the Cheshire Regiment. Or Forever Your Own Tommy, if you prefer. She looked delighted. So there was a sweetheart. Looks like it. I guess he didn't make it through the war, though. This is the last of the letters. Oh, how sad. Has it got a date on it? November 1916. It doesn't say where he was, though. I expect they censored that sort of thing. But it would be easy enough to find out, wouldn't it? Now that you know what regiment he was in. Look, I must go. The traffic's been murdered this week, and I still want this stuff shifted. He kissed her goodbye, and listened as her heels clicked down the driveway, and the car reversed and disappeared off up the street. It sounded a bit off, he thought. Be worth checking the brakes when he had a chance. It was due for a service soon, anyway. He returned to the letter. This will make you laugh. Or maybe it won't. I don't think I've got a very good idea anymore of what's funny or not after 10 months out here. I was talking to one of our fellows the other day, a lieutenant who's been interrogating a lot of the prisoners down at GHQ. He speaks good German, was a sales clerk for Levers before all this began. And guess what their lot call the trenches? Schützengraben, if you can get your tongue round that. And it's because a Graben means a grave in German. Think of that. Sometimes when I'm standing to out there in the freezing cold, with the water up to my ankles and the rats swarming round my feet and the stink rolling in of all the bodies that are lying out there, the only thing you want to look at is that rectangle of sky above the top of the trench, with the clouds still scudding by as if everything was normal down beneath them. And that's where I think I am, already in the grave. And they're just saving time by sending me there early. Forgive the ramblings of a lonely soldier. You mustn't worry about me. Will has promised to look out for me, and I have promised to look out for him, and I know in your prayers you are looking out for both of us. He is a good man, your brother, and I'll be proud to have him standing beside me when the order comes and we go over the top together. And no doubt the lieutenant is right, and this will be the push that ends it all, and Will and I will be back before you know it. Back from our grave, and home where we belong. And know this, whatever the dawn may bring, I will always be forever your own Tommy. I put all that stuff back up in the loft, he told her that evening as he fiddled with the thermostat. I don't think I'm going to carry on with it, to be honest. What is wrong with this thing? We never had a problem last winter. It can't be on the blink already. Why not? She asked him, surprised. She was folding towels ready to go in the airing cupboard. I don't know. It just seems like it might be better to leave some things as they are. I mean, Nana obviously never wanted us to know about this Tommy, did she? I don't think she ever told Mum about him. Your Mum had the letters, Susan pointed out. Yes, but that was in the stuff we cleared out from her attic. I don't reckon she ever even looked at them. She never said anything about it. What if she did look at them and it upset her? Why would it upset her? Here, help me with this. She passed him the end of one of the big bath sheets. Well, he said, and tailed off, thinking. If he hadn't been killed, she would have married him instead of Grandpa. And Mum and Sarah and me and Jack wouldn't even exist. Yes, but he wasn't he? And you do. It's just the sort of thing you expect to find out about when you do your family tree. It's fun. He didn't look convinced. Well, I think it would be a shame to stop. You were enjoying it so much. She picked up the pile of laundry and walked up the stairs. God, look at this. It's no wonder you can't get the place warm. He followed her out. She was looking up at a black rectangle above her head. You've forgotten to put the trapdoor back over. He stared up into the darkness. But I'm sure. I remember. Oh, go and fetch the steps. That's where all the heat's going, up there. But when he went up the ladder, it didn't feel like there was any heat in the attic at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. There was an almost tangible chill rolling out of the black hole above his head. He could see his breath clouding in front of his face as he came level with the frieze that ran round the top of the wallpaper on the landing. And he stopped, clutching the ladder in sudden fright. What was this? This was ridiculous. He was a grown man, and he'd never been afraid of the dark, but he was no more willing to put his head up into that cold blackness above the rim of the trapdoor than he would have been to let go of the ladder and tip himself over the banister 20 feet down into the hallway below. What the hell was wrong with him? What did he expect to happen? The light switch was only a couple of feet above the trapdoor, attached to one of the roof beams. He had reached up and pressed it 1,000 times without even thinking. He knew perfectly well what was waiting for him in the darkness. Only the boxes and bags he had been up there shifting around a few hours before. Forcing himself to smile at his own stupidity, he screwed his eyes shut and groped upwards with a trembling hand for the handle of the trapdoor, holding on tightly to the cold metal of the ladder with his other hand. He was letting out his breath in little, sharp gasps, all his senses straining for the tiniest noise, the slightest sensation from the blackness above. And all he could think was, if something reaches out and touches my arm right now. But then his grasping fingers found the knob on the trapdoor and he pulled it towards him, just as a board creaked a few feet away from his head. And something started to move across the attic. What was that noise? You didn't fall, did you? Asked Susan, appearing at the foot of the stairs. No, just came down the ladder a bit quick. Thought there was another step, he gasped, drawing back into the doorway to Jack's room so that she wouldn't see the clammy sweat that had erupted on his forehead, in his armpits, and in the small of his back. All sorted now. I'll put this ladder away in the garage, I think. We're not going to need it for a while. The shopping centre was crowded. Christmas shoppers, she supposed, even though it was barely the second week of November, and the only table was right in the far corner of the food court, and it hadn't even been cleared. It was only after they had shifted the dirty cups to the side, and unloaded their own trays, and pushed their bags well in under the table where no one could make off with them, that she told Carol what was on her mind. I'm worried about Colin, she said, as she split the foil top on the tub of milk and spiraled it into her coffee. He's having trouble sleeping. A number of times in the last couple of weeks I've woken up in the middle of the night and found him just lying there, wide awake, staring up at the ceiling. I keep telling him to go to the doctors, but he won't listen. Her friend smiled. Oh, they never do they? When Rob's back went, it was a week before he'd admit there was anything wrong. And even then I had to drive him down there, or I don't believe he'd have gone in. Is he worrying about something? She shook her head, lifting the cup to her lips, but finding it still too hot to drink. I don't think so. Not that he'll talk about anyway. I think he misses Jack more than he'll admit. He's been quiet ever since he went off to university. Carol nodded. They're close, aren't they? Always were. And I don't know. I think when Jack was coming and going all the time, it sort of gave Colin some structure to his day. You know, I was worried when he took early retirement that he wasn't going to find enough to do with himself. That's why I wanted him to get going with the family tree stuff. He's not kept up with it. No, he seemed to lose interest. He was so enthusiastic about it to start with. We were even going to have a trip down to London. Then he just sort of turned in on himself. He sits around all day. He stopped getting up in the mornings when I go to work, which is fair enough because he's so tired all the time, but the other day I swear he didn't get up at all. He was still up in the bedroom when I got home, and he hadn't even shaved. I'm really worried about him, Carol. Her friend gave her a reassuring smile. Well, we should be able to sort out the sleeping thing at least. Valerian's very good for that. We've got time to get across to Holland and Barrett before we're due back. She smiled, grateful that at least her friend was taking the problem seriously. Thank you. Oh, don't be daft. I've been taking it for months for my hot flushes. Her friend grinned, slipping off her winter coat and stowing it on the back of her seat, tweaking the crumpled red flower that was pinned to the lapel as she did so. Oh, just look at the state of this poppy. They always get tatty, don't they? It feels so disrespectful. Oh, I feel terrible. I haven't got one yet. You can get one here. I saw the man earlier. Where's he got to? She craned round, scanning the crowded mall. That's weird. He was over there, dressed up in one of the old-fashioned uniforms. I saw him when we were trying to find a seat. He was staring right over here. I thought he must have his eye on one of the waitresses. Susan gazed around at the milling shoppers and shook her head. It doesn't matter. There's always someone at the station. I can pop in on the way home. Come on, or we'll never get back to work in time. What did you say this stuff was called? She posted an advent calendar off to Jack at university. It was silly, she knew, but she thought it would probably make him laugh. And anyway, he would appreciate the chocolate. Colin was still lying there on his back when she came back from brushing her teeth, just staring up at the ceiling. Did you have another bad night, love? He nodded without even looking at her. Oh, I'm sorry. She sat down on the bed beside him, stroking his bald patch. Do you think you managed to drop off at all? Don't think so. His mumble was almost unintelligible. She glanced across at the clock on the bedside table. She was going to be late again. Look, why don't you come down and meet me for lunch today? We could pop into Boots in the arcade and see if they can recommend anything stronger. I thought those things of Carol's might start working if we gave them a few weeks, but they don't seem much good, do they? He shook his head emphatically, rumpling the pillow. No, not today. I can't go out, not feeling like this. She balled her fists, digging her nails into her palm, but when she spoke, she managed to keep her voice calm. Well, why don't you try to have a bit of a nap this morning and see how you feel later? I'll give you a call from the office. He scowled up at the ceiling. No, you get on. I'll stop here. It'll be okay. She really did have to go. She shook her head. I'll give you a call later anyway. Maybe go out for a walk or something. The fresh air might help. He listened to the sound of her car as she pulled out of the drive. And you sure you're doing the right thing? Carol glanced round the office to check there were no supervisors lurking, before scooting her swivel chair over to Susan's side of the desk and taking her friend's hands in her own. Look, you need to do this for your own sanity, if not his. There's no shame in it these days. Oh, look at Robbie Williams. He'll thank you for it in the long run, I promise you. Susan nodded. Now go on and get it done while Her Highness isn't around to listen in on you. I'll make us both a cup of coffee while you're doing it." She punched in the number from the piece of paper she had been carrying around in her handbag for a week or more. The receptionist answered on the first ring. "Hello?" "Oh, hello. It's Susan Baxter here. I wondered if I could make an appointment with Dr. Verdi. It's actually my husband I need to talk to him about." Colin sat on the edge of the bed, his hands on his knees, absolutely still, his face turned up to the ceiling. He had an idea that the thing in the attic only moved when he moved, so he was concentrating every ounce of his will on maintaining his position, ignoring the pins and needles which were creeping maddeningly in his legs and the cramp in his neck, and straining his ears for the slightest sound from above. So when the phone rang and shattered the silence, it was like an electric shock running through his body. "Hello? Dad?" "Jack." "Sorry, were you out in the garden?" "What?" "It just took you a while to answer. I thought you might have been gardening." No, I was just... Sorry, I was doing something." He glanced out through the patio doors at the garden. It was already getting dark. Susan had been nagging him about getting out there and raking up the leaves that morning, or it might have been the day before. Too late now, anyway. He pulled the telephone cord to its full length so that he could stand at the bottom of the stairs and keep an eye on the trapdoor while he was talking. "Oh, well, I just... How are you? Okay?" Fine. And yourself?" Jack didn't normally phone during the day. He usually waited till the weekend when it was cheaper, and he knew his mum would be around for a chat. Yeah, fine. We've got a reading week next week, and I was thinking I might come back and see you." "No!" The word came out so quickly it startled them both. "I mean, aren't you supposed to be studying? Isn't that the point of a reading week?" His son sounded hurt. "Well, I'd bring some books back with me. It's fine. My tutor said quite a lot of people go home, and if I need anything else, they'll probably have it at the library in town." "Oh, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, it's specialist books that you'll be needing, isn't it? They don't really have academic stuff." He was gabbling, searching for excuses. "Well, I'm sure it'll be fine anyway." He sounded doubtful. "I'll probably just come back for a couple of days. Maybe get the coach down on Tuesday." "It's not really convenient, Jack. Your mum will be working, and you've left it too late for her to arrange any time off. It's their busiest time, the run-up to Christmas. If you'd let us know earlier." He put a hand over the mouthpiece and held the receiver at arm's length, climbing the first couple of steps to peer round the turn of the stairs at the door to Jack's bedroom. It remained very firmly closed. "Oh, well, I guess I won't see you till Christmas in that case." His son suddenly sounded like a little boy again, in need of comfort, but in need of protection as well, and that was more important. "That'll be nice, yes. It's probably for the best. We don't want you falling behind." The monstrous noises had started up again, louder than ever. He had to get Jack off the phone before he heard. "All right. Give my love to Mum, then." "All right. Bye, then." "Bye." As soon as he had got the receiver down, the noise reached such a crescendo that he had to sit down at the bottom of the stairs with his eyes shut and his hands clamped tight over his ears to block it out. Jack didn't phone again until Sunday. Colin was sitting in front of the Antiques Roadshow, with the sound turned right down, when Susan came in from talking to their son and picked up the remote control and switched it off altogether. Her eyes looked red, and her lips were a thin line. "You and I are going to have a serious talk," she said, in a voice that was trembling. Dr. Johnson was his favourite out of all the doctors at the unit, probably only 5 or 6 years older than Jack, and she had a way of listening that didn't make you feel like an idiot, no matter what sort of rubbish you came out with. He was glad it was her on duty on his last day there. He wouldn't have liked to leave without saying goodbye. "So, we've got an appointment set up for you to come back and have a chat to us in the new year. But if you're worried about anything before then, please do give us a call." He smiled across the table. "I will. Don't worry. You've been very helpful. And you're all clear about the medication you're going to be taking?" He nodded, and she flashed him a lovely, reassuring smile. "As I say, I don't think you'll be needing the doxepin for more than a few weeks. Once you've got your sleeping patterns back to normal, I think you'll start feeling a lot better about things. Try to remember all the stuff we've been through about keeping a bedtime routine and getting plenty of fresh air and exercise during the day, and everything should be back to normal in no time." She came round from behind her desk and led him to the door, smiling all the way. Susan was outside in the waiting room, and she had Jack with her, looking rangy and handsome in a blue hooded top and a haircut that could have done with at least a couple of inches off the back. The three of them hugged for a long time, and he had to take a moment and borrow a tissue off Susan before he got himself properly under control and ready to walk out into the bright winter sunshine beyond the clinic doors. "When did you get back?" he asked his son when they were all in the car and Susan was driving them home. "Just this morning. Term only finished yesterday. Mum picked me up from the station on the way to meet you." "He wanted to be there when you got out," said Susan as they pulled out onto the ring road. "I thought we could put the Christmas tree up this afternoon. You and Jack could go to the garden centre and pick us out a nice one." "I'd like that," he said, and swivelled round to smile at his son in the seat behind. "Run up to the attic and get the decorations down for your dad, would you?" asked Susan, while she was tidying away the lunch things. Colin had insisted on going out to have a look under the bonnet of the car, which he reckoned was making a funny noise on the way back from the hospital. "I've got the ladder ready. It's leaning against the wall in your room." She got distracted while loading the dishwasher, looking through the cupboards and wondering if they had enough food in now that Jack was home for the holiday. She had got used to it being just her over the past fortnight, and forgotten how much a 19-year-old could put away in a single sitting. Colin came in through the back door while she was counting mince pies. He was rubbing oil off his hands with what looked suspiciously like one of her tea towels. "I can see what's wrong with it," he announced. "It was due for a service a couple of weeks ago. Don't suppose you remembered, did you?" "No, I didn't," she told him. She had had quite enough on her mind. "Not to worry. I'll give the garage a call. I doubt they'll be able to fit it in before New Year now, though." There was a cry from upstairs, a sickening yell which echoed all through the house. "Jack!" He made it up the stairs in seconds, with Susan not far behind him. His son's head appeared in the hole that led into the attic, grimacing. "It's all right. It's just... I think it's a rat. It's okay. It's dead," he added, seeing his mother's look of horror. "Been dead for a while by the look of it. It's gross. Right in the middle of the walkway. I nearly stepped on the bloody thing." "Oh no. How could it have got in?" She turned to her husband, expecting him to share her disgust. But instead he was looking as if he had just got the punchline to a really good joke. "What are you smiling at?" she asked him. "Me? Oh, nothing. It's all right, Jack. Come down and I'll deal with it. Get me some plastic bags, would you, Sue? Oh, and some flash in a bucket. Look, it's fine. It can't do any harm if it's dead, can it? We'll get rent-a-kill in case there are any more. Come on, smile. It's Christmas. Whether it was the pills or the counselling, she didn't know, but he was on great form for the next few days. He was clearly delighted to have Jack back, and the two of them did everything together, from picking up the tree and the wreath to stringing a new set of outdoor lights in the ornamental cherry on the front lawn. They even stomped across to the wreck when it was already dark one evening to get holly from the big tree beside the cricket pavilion, coming back with great armfuls of the glossy green leaves that they strung up not far off eye level in the hallway, which she thought was taking the carol dangerously literally. But there was no way she was going to complain when they were obviously having such a good time together. She did complain the following morning when she noticed the set of muddy boot prints that led through the house from the patio door, but the pair of them stood there like naughty schoolboys and swore blind it was nothing to do with them, which was such a blatant cheek that she had to let them off. On Christmas Eve, she sent them both round to pick up the turkey, while she peeled the sprouts and potatoes in peace with the carols from King's, and the three of them had a drink together before Jack was due to head out and meet his friends in the town. They were going out to the pub, and then on to midnight mass afterwards, which was apparently a tradition. That made her smile. They'd only done it for the first time last year, when they were still in sixth form. It was also apparently a tradition to dress up, and Jack came downstairs in a new olive green shirt she hadn't seen before, and one of his dad's ties, looking so handsome that she had to get a photo of him. "Stand there in front of the Christmas tree," she instructed him. "Left a bit, that's right. Keep still. How does the flash work again? No, it's all right, I've got it." She fired off a couple of shots to be sure, the harsh white light bleaching the room and imprinting his silhouette onto her eyelids when she blinked. But she could see that Jack was eager to get away, and his increasingly impatient expression was only going to spoil the photos. So she let him go. "Give us a kiss, then," she told him, and she went to the front door to wave him off and make him repeat his promise that he would look after her car and definitely not have anything more to drink, however much his friends tried to persuade him to. "As if," he mocked her gently. "I'm the designated driver. They're all relying on me for the lifts home." When she got back to the lounge, Colin was already settled on the recliner, watching some rubbish on ITV. "I hope they come out all right," she said, picking up the camera and making sure she had wound it on properly. "He looked a bit washed out with the flash. We can finish this film off tomorrow, and then I'll drop it into Boots when I'm back at work." Colin didn't respond. He was half asleep already. They'd been warned the pills could do that. At least there was one advantage. With him in that state, she thought she could risk turning up the thermostat a couple of notches. It had got cold in the house again. Well, she was actually shivering. She wanted to make sure it would be nice and warm for Jack. When he got back, Oh, 500 hours, Christmas morning. It is still dark, will be for hours yet, no matter how many excited children are lying awake, willing the sun to rise and reveal the stockings they know have magically appeared at the end of their beds. But the twin beams of the headlights pick out glittering diamonds of hoarfrost in the branches of the oak tree that towers over the country lane, and on the leaves of the mistletoe that hunkers in the fork of its branches. In the ditch, the reeds are clamped upright, gripped at their base by the glassy sheet that has thawed and refrozen countless times already this winter. Where the bonnet of the car has shattered the ice, a murky brown meniscus, has already covered its jagged edges, and the engine has cooled now. The surface of the water will be frozen again by the time the boy is found. The frost is beginning to reclaim the tyre tracks too, the parallel lines that are etched down the middle of the road, blackening into two smears of cauterized rubber, which turn this way, then that, and finally depart from the surface of the road altogether. And already you can barely make out the other marks on the surface of the tar macadam just ahead of where the car left the road, where a set of army issue boots stood and scuffed and stamped in an attempt to shake out the cramps that are the scourge of any sentry ordered to stand to in the last black, bleak hours before the dawn. Today's story was The Lily White Boy by Adam Macqueen. It was read by JASPER SAYS. Well, I do hope you enjoyed it. And if you would like to read Haunted Tales by Adam Macqueen, it's available now, as they say, in all good bookshops and from online retailers, published by Swift Press. For more information, please read the show notes in the description. And until next time, sweet dreams.